So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar this morning. So, you're joining us at the Flood Innovation Centre for our webinar all about growing your business in the property flood resilience market. So, a big thank you today to the Waterline for hosting us and letting us host our webinar during this week. Just to let you know that we will be recording this session and we'll be making it available after today. So do get in touch if you'd like the link after today. So my name is Pip Betts. I manage the Flood Innovation Centre. We're a relatively new project. We launched about a year ago properly, but I'd say we're probably, given the COVID situation that we've had, it's kind of our public launch is pretty much happening this week at Waterline. We're really getting going and getting the message out there to the region about what the work is we'll be doing at the Flood Innovation Centre. So as I said, massive thanks to Marketing Humber and the Waterline Summit today, and also to our sponsors, Bishop Burton College. I think the week's been fantastic so far, a really good showcase of the work that's happening in the Humber, and I think despite the difficulties that COVID has presented, I think it's really helped to sort of jettison the Humber onto a global stage. So that's really exciting, and we're really excited to be part of that whole initiative. So a big thank you to our contributors, who you'll hear from in a second, and I'll introduce them shortly. Who'll be talking you through the property flood resilience market. And a big thank you from me to Elena and the team at the Flood Innovation Centre for pulling this event together today. I'll just take you through a few little basics of housekeeping. So we've got Chun from the team in the background, kind of technically managing the buttons. So he'll be kind of making sure people are muted and turning cameras on and off and what have you. So don't worry about us being able to hear you chewing your breakfast. And we've got, you'll see on the screen there, there's an option to have a Q&A. So there's a little Q&A box in the center of the screen. Feel free to type in your questions as we go through. We'll attempt to answer those as we go through, but we will run a question and answer session at the end as well, where we can verbally revisit those. And I believe there's the option for you to raise your hand. So if you do have a question, you're feeling brave and you want to sort of answer that question, ask that question at any point going through, please do so. I'm going to start with a little bit of an outline of what the Flood Innovation Centre does, but rather than me talk through that, we've just had a lovely new film made, which does the job much better than I could. So I'll sit back and enjoy our little film, which will tell you all about the Flood Innovation Centre.
Welcome to the Flood Innovation Centre, a place focused on flood-related research to help your business develop new services, processes and products in flood resilience. Located in the Humber, the UK's most flood-prone region after London, the Flood Innovation Centre is a place that helps businesses to innovate in the emerging flood resilience market. We're shaping the future of flood innovation by reducing flood risk, transforming our relationship with water, and helping our communities become more flood resilient. We're here to help your business develop innovative services, processes and products in flood resilience. A centre that brings together industry contacts and exceptional academic research to support businesses to progress new ideas. Our bespoke innovation packages are designed to help your business to thrive, drawing on in-depth sector-based workshops, design and testing services, VR modelling, prototyping and much more. We can support your business to expand into new markets, increase sales opportunities, diversify product ranges, and improve efficiencies. We also host many specialist events throughout the year, from one-hour webinars to in-depth workshop series to keep you ahead of the latest developments in flood resilience. If you'd like to find out more, visit our website, follow us on social, or complete an inquiry form.
Okay, so hopefully that gave you a little bit of an insight into what the Flood Innovation Centre is and does and can do for your business. And as Kate mentioned there, we run a series of webinars and workshops throughout the year, and the webinar that you're attending at the moment is a precursor to a workshop series that we've got happening later on in the year. So today is really a little taster if you like, of an introduction to the property flood resilience market. And if it's something that you want to hear more about, or you have contacts or colleagues who you think could benefit from finding out more about the opportunities that exist in this market, then please do let them know about the workshop series, and we'll provide a few more details about that later. So I'm just going to introduce our speakers now. So I'll be handing over in a second to my colleague from the Innovation Centre, that's Dr. Elena Kuvshinova, and she'll do a bit of an introduction today to the webinar and also to the property flood resilience market. Then we'll be hearing from Steve Page from Page Consulting. So Steve's working with us to do some of our innovation workshops at the moment, and he'll be really talking a bit more in-depthly about what the market looks like, what the opportunities are and the different sectors within it. We'll then hand on to a colleague, Sam Ramsden, who's another colleague of ours. We're all based within the Energy and Environment Institute at the University of Hull. And Sam's done some work, some research and survey work, speaking to those living in and around Hull who've been affected by flood events previously. So he gives us some really great first-hand experience and kind of feedback from those who've been flooded about what they would like to see happening in the property flood resilience market. So that's really helpful. We'll then hand over to Emily Howes and Lauren Davidson. They're working on a DEFRA Pathfinder project called Yorkshire Flood Resilience. So they're doing a lot of work out in the community to try and educate communities and individuals about the need for property flood resilience. So again, that's really helping to sort of elevate the market that we're trying to operate in. And then finally, we'll hear from Martin Dolan, who works from Aquobex, a company that produces property flood resilience solutions. So we're hearing again firsthand there from somebody who operates within the sector and some of the issues that they find and some of the findings that they've had from innovating in the sector. And then we'll close with, we'll round up with a question and answer session, and then we'll close. So I think that's all from me. I'm going to pass on to Elena now. Do you want me to stop sharing, Elena? You're muted. I'll mute myself and then we'll pass on.
Welcome everybody. Thank you, Pete, for introducing me. I'm the technology research manager from Flood Innovation Center. And I would like to introduce you to the property flood resilience market and tell a couple of words about why we think it's so important to study this market and to provide with knowledge every stakeholders who take active part in the property flood resilience market. First of all, I would like to highlight that people live alongside with the floodings or flood catastrophes all their history. And still that the consequences of flooding are not less devastating than they were before. I would even tell that they are more damaging than it was before. So for each year, only in the UK, the government spent more than £1 billion to repair any damage that was caused by flooding. And alongside with that, we now face the climate change. Climate change brings us to the fact that now we can't work anymore with the methods and models we work. We can't predict flooding, we can't predict the risk which is brings by flooding. And the good illustrations of that is that, for example, back 2007, 2/3 of all properties that were flooded, they weren't in the high risk area. So for 2/3 of people, the flood wasn't predicted by any possible means. And for example, last February, we could tell that last February in 2020, we have 400% of average fluvial water we had before. So we could address it as a new normal. So it's not, we have to face that the flooding will be more frequent, more devastating, and we have to face that we need to do something as a whole society to manage this flood risk. And along with that, we now can tell that the flooding events are more widespread. So along with the coastal floods and real floods, now we have floods from rains. So surface water plays a key role now in flooding our properties, and we can't be protected properly from that. So flash floods now are very devastating, and we can't do anything with our existing protecting means we have now. So what telling about the property flood resilience market itself? So it's actually a very new market. It appears, we can tell, it appears about 10 years ago. It came from the property level protection market, which was focused only on protection on barrier means that could be installed to protect properties and land. But now we face the simple fact that we can't protect ourselves anymore totally. We can't reduce the risks to some level, but we face the fact that the water comes to our houses. What to do with that? So that means we need other measures to be adopted, and that cause that new products come to the market, new manufacturers come to the market, and people like to know the opportunities, the possible measures they can install in their houses to prevent, to mitigate risks, to shorten the time which people will force out their houses to be flooded. And this is the huge opportunity for companies which already work on this market, on the property level protection. But for new companies which would like to work on this, new technologies are welcome everywhere, and the market is far from being saturated. So there are always new products could be involved. There are always new manufacturers could be involved, and new measures of regulation. And they bring us to the policy comes from totally prevention to resilience. That means prevention where it's possible and recovery. That's making your houses to be faster for rehabilitation after being flooded. And that means that the stakeholders on this market are more, let's say, stakeholders of this market not so trivial. So they involve not only businesses and recipient stakeholders as in normal markets, they always involve responders, which is fire rescue, police, health workers. They involve dramatically decision makers, which are government bodies, which are communities, which are non-profit organizations who would like to make our society less prone to be flooded and recover faster after all these possible catastrophes. So that's why I think that getting new knowledge, research about property flood resilience market is very important, not only for end consumers, but for manufacturers, as they are opening new opportunities, new ways of research and innovation of this market, and to provide the business growth not only locally but nationally. And so the next speaker I would like to invite Steve, who will tell us about the property flood resilience market, who will give us the overview of the market, the tendency, product range, and who will highlight the possible ways to increase your business, to raise sales of your business. Thank you.
Fine, thank you very much for that, Elena. I'm just going to try and get my screen back up. I'm just getting a lot of warning signs up here. Right, I think we've got that sorted. Good morning. Thanks very much for that, Elena. My name's Steve Page, and I'm a director of Page Consulting Limited. We're a consultancy and training company based in the Humber region that assists businesses to grow, basically. I'd like to spend a few minutes with you this morning just having a little look at the property flood resilience market, or PFR market as it's often referred to. The changes that are taking place to it, with some of the things that are driving that change, and also some opportunities which are emerging out from that, just building on what Elena has just been saying. If you're a business in this region that's looking to diversify or expand, then I think there may very well be some excellent opportunities for you in this marketplace. Two things I'm going to concentrate on, really how the property flood resilience market has been evolving over recent years, and what opportunities there might be for businesses in this region to look at entering. So what's driving the market? I think ultimately the root cause is climate change. In particular, the way that it's been affecting the nature and the frequency of the severe weather events that we've been seeing across the UK. As the nature of our weather changes, so do the measures that we need to take in order to make our properties more resilient to the impact of flooding. In the past, flooding mostly occurred in low-lying areas around rivers or in coastal regions. These regions are particularly vulnerable during storms, with storm surges and high tides. The way that we have traditionally reduced the risks in these high-risk areas is by introducing large, complex and expensive government-funded flood protection infrastructure projects. But there's a limit to the resources available, and we just can't keep going on applying them. In recent years, we've seen in the UK an increase in surface rainfall water causing flooding. The surface rainfall water flooding is problematic as it's much more difficult to predict when and where it will occur. And this phenomenon cannot be easily rectified with large government infrastructure projects. So, the changes in the UK's climatic conditions are now increasingly exposing UK properties to flooding, leaving property owners to have to make or take responsibility for their own actions to better protect their properties from the threat of surface rainfall flooding. And they are looking for a wide range of products and services in increasing numbers to help them improve their property flood resilience. So, if you've ever been flooded, you'll know exactly just how devastating it can be, not just in terms of the financial costs and all the haggling with the insurance company, the disruption of the building works and the standards of repair potentially. There's also the significant disruption that comes from having to live in different accommodation and the lengthy timescales that the building works can take to complete. There's the worry that you may never be able to sell your property to move elsewhere, as the event will have been recorded and visible to future prospective buyers. And if you thought that was hard enough, there's coming to terms with the loss or damage to personal possessions, family heirlooms, and all of the sad feelings that arise from the sentimental value that you attach to them. Horror story, devastating. What you may be surprised to discover is that recovering from flood damage is often much higher than you expect. On average, a 3-bedroom house can cost you around £30,000. This includes the cost of stripping out the damaged furnishings, the walls, the floors, the cost of drying the property out, as well as the cost of the reconstruction works. For those wanting to add flood proofing measures after the reconstruction works, the cost can be as high as £45,000. And these flood proofing or flood prevention measures sort of typically cost around about £15,000 and include the sort of things that I've just listed up here, like raising electric power points, fitting non-return valves, laying tiled floors, installing smart air bricks, fitting removable barriers to doors and windows. It should be noted that the relatively high cost of floodproofing is currently a barrier to market growth, as the risk of poor quality products and substandard building workmanship reduces confidence. And this potentially opens up opportunities for the market for the introduction of innovative products and services that are both affordable and meet rigorous product standards. So that takes us nicely on to look at what opportunities there may be for local and regional businesses to enter into the market, and what opportunities there may also be for new product innovation. What I like to do is just take a minute to have a little look at the market cycle and the stages that are involved in it. A wide range of business activities are involved, with specific types of businesses contributing to specific stages, which is not untypical of most market cycles. Greater capacity will, however, be needed as the market grows in the future. And just building on what Elena was saying in terms of the market being far from saturated. So let's have a little look at each of the 7 stages that are involved in the cycle. I'm not going to go into too much detail in these, but we will be going into an awful lot more detail in the up and coming workshops that Pip and Elena mentioned earlier. So just sort of an insight to what we're looking at. So the first stage, flood risk identification. Property owners want to know the flood risk in their location so that they can decide how best to protect their property. Much of this information is available from the Environmental Agency's flood maps. The second stage, preparation and planning. This stage is about finding out what products and services are available in the market and the costs associated with them, having identified the nature and the risks of the flooding that your location may put you in. Stage 3, the property survey. An important stage for property owners to get their property professionally surveyed. This will check all the possible places where water could seep in, such as doors, windows, air bricks, and even the toilet, and provide a specification of the measures to be adopted specifically to protect your property. The main part of the market, the bit that's most visible, is stage 4, product acquisition and supply. At this stage, property owners should have all the information they need to select and purchase their PFR products and services they require within the budget that they've made available for themselves. So this is a substantial part of the market, as I've said, that involves many businesses. But from a consumer point of view, great care is required to ensure that reputable suppliers and high standard products are used. Product installation and testing. This stage is where you see everything coming together. All of the equipment and services that you may have procured through a construction building company or a equipment manufacturer should now be coming together and installed on your property and thoroughly tested to make sure that they work. Post that installation and test, we're then looking at the operation, but particularly the maintenance and repair, to ensure that the items that you bought will work when you want them to, and that they have been kept in good condition to ensure that that's the case. And the final stage really is in terms of the removal and replacement as new technologies come in, to ensure that the life of the product is extended, or when it reaches its end, items are removed and disposed of correctly. So the early stages of this particular market cycle really involve professional chartered surveyors and others associated with that sort of construction planning and architectural services that are involved there. Stages 4 to 7 typically involve manufacturers, wholesalers, distributors, supply merchants and builders and maintenance engineers. So quite a comprehensive set of stages that provide opportunities for many different types of business within the marketplace. Now, the market breaks down into a series of sectors or subsectors, categories, and the products are refined, and products and services are refined in the market around the individual needs of those particular categories. So that the sort of categories that we're typically seeing are products and services around the residential sector. Industrial sector on a different scale of things and may have additional requirements above and beyond the residential. Commercial, industrial, but there's also a sector which is looking at bringing flood prevention equipment on a temporary basis, where there might be an urgent need with a flood warning coming out, that can have these systems installed and then taken away again afterwards. So that's how the market sort of breaks down into the various sectors. And if we just take a moment to have a little look at the residential one, to see what's involved in that, we can see the sort of products and services fall into these categories. So there's landscaping and drainage, relatively low cost activity that can make a massive difference. Bringing in perimeter barriers. This might stop water coming up a driveway or into the garden. Property barriers themselves. So these are the sort of ones that you see fastened to doors, windows, garage doors, that should the water then reach the side of the house, there's a level of protection for it. Non-return valves stop water coming up through the sink or into the toilets. Walls and floor sealants. Again, when the water goes over the damp-proof membrane, then there's an opportunity for water to get into properties, gates and enclosures, etc. Pumps and storage systems where that may be appropriate. So I hope that's just sort of given you a little bit of a feel for the way the market's structured in terms of the 7 stages, the different sector categories, and also the types of product that we're seeing in each of those particular areas. I hope that's been of interest to you. I'll be joining in the Q&A session a little bit later on in this webinar, but really it's over to me, over to Elena to pass on to Sam, I think, who'll take you through the next part. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I think, yes, your presentation was really interesting. You demonstrated that the market has a lot of opportunities for growth of businesses, and you just highlighted points of entrance for innovation and to develop new products for the potential manufacturers on the market. And I think it's very useful to show how the business could grow just operating or entering this market. Thank you very much. And I would like to welcome Sam Ramsden from Hull University. He will introduce the point of view of recipient stakeholders, which is very important, how the households, how the people who owns the houses see the market, what main problems do they think they face, and how do they like these problems to be answered. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone. I apologise for my camera suddenly gone really dark. I'm not quite sure why, but hopefully the presentation will be okay. So basically, I know I've only got a few minutes to go through the work, so I'm picking on some highlights, and if there's any further questions, then please ask me as part of this session, or my email address is there and I can go into more detail. But basically, I'm presenting some findings from quite an extensive survey we conducted in Hull. We spoke to over 450 people about flooding in general, their experience and what they think about flooding now. And in this presentation, I pick out some of the findings relevant for businesses and marketing, particularly around property level protection. So we conducted the survey in autumn 2008. It was at the end of quite a dry period, actually. And the survey was conducted in collaboration with Living with Water, which is a partnership of the Hull City Council, Yorkshire Water, East Riding Council and the Environment Agency. We put together a survey team to target 3 wards: Derringham in the west of Hull, which had been quite severely flooded in 2007, and then Beverley and Newland and North Carr wards, which also had experienced pockets of flooding in 2007. And we got quite a good response, because I think it was the first time that many people had been asked to share their views, and people wanted to talk about what had happened and what they feel now. And also we put together a good survey team who spent a lot of time talking to people. And the aim of the survey was really to build a picture of resilience for Living with Water to monitor and evaluate over time. So we asked people about experience of flooding in 2007, which was particularly relevant because of the surface water flooding. The areas weren't as affected by tidal flooding in 2013. We asked what people think about flooding now, and included in that is what have people been able to do to protect themselves, what property level protection have they installed, and also what are the barriers to that. So just a quick recap, I'm sure people are very familiar with the devastating impacts of the floods in 2007. And then that's a picture of the flooding and the wards we targeted for our survey. And it's important to say that we targeted kind of flood affected areas, and we ended up speaking to a lot of people who were affected by flooding. So these results aren't generalizable for Hull, but are from the people that we spoke to. So in terms of the people who responded and how they were affected by flooding, so as you can see, 37% were either flooded or houses were damaged by flooding in 2007. So we spoke to a lot of people who were affected in 2007. And then we also spoke to people who were disrupted in different ways, including essential travel and disruptions to work. Health and well-being was a big impact of the 2000 floods, and people described long-term impacts in terms of mental health and physical health. It's important to talk about, it's important to consider what happened in 2007, because there are some, people don't want to live through that again. There's long-term impacts, but also there's some experiences at the time that have made, sort of create barriers to people adopting some of the property level measures that we're talking about, that Steve highlighted in his presentation. And in particular, people talked about the problems in that repairing damaged houses, and particularly difficulties dealing with insurance companies and builders. People talked about low quality workmanship and builders from outside the area making a killing. I've highlighted that quote there. But that was a persistent issue, and we asked the question, what was the worst part of the flood for you? And the biggest group of answers were around repairing damage to the property. Moving on to what people think about flooding now. So we asked this question on a scale of 1 to 5, what people felt about flooding, and it was very even spread of answers, and 20% of respondents were very concerned. But this was higher for certain groups, in particular, higher for owner occupiers who were flooded in 2007. And over half of respondents felt that serious flooding could happen again in the next 30 years. There's been a big programme of citywide flood defences in Hull, and it was making people feel safer, but particularly for those who lived in closer proximity to flood defences. And there are areas where people don't live in close proximity to those defences, including in Beverley and Newland, where we spoke to people. And this chart summarises the main responses of what people felt should be done. And you can see the second highest group is householder actions. So people wanted more support to do things themselves. And the next two slides, I go into more detail about what people have managed to do themselves in terms of general measures and then property level flood protection. So you can see the highest kind of general measure to increase resilience to flooding was making sure insurance covers flooding, but this was less than half of respondents, and a big factor was affordability and people not being able to afford insurance. And this is an issue through the kind of survey findings that Hull is consistently one of the areas with high levels of socioeconomic disadvantage in England. And so, as Steve mentioned, it's a barrier to people adopting certain resilience measures. And then going into detail on the property level measures. So 28% of our respondents had done something. And this slide kind of summarises the main actions. As you can see, the percentages are very small. So 11, valuables in a safe place being the kind of largest measure. And there's a strong theme running through that people weren't sure whether what they'd done was effective or if they'd done things right. So air bricks came up as an issue. People didn't know whether they should cover them, whether that would lead to kind of damp in the cellars, and people didn't really talk about smart air bricks and installing those. Another issue is people had kept sandbags, and they've been shown to be not very effective in the time of a flood, but people didn't know where to buy temporary flood barriers. There was no kind of main recommended flood barriers that were recommended and were available in the local area. And after flooding, as I showed in the previous slide, there was very little support to people to repair and kind of flood-proof their house for the future. So that was a strong theme. And then also a strong theme again around trusted local traders. So a kind of key part of this survey work was feeding back to Living with Water, and they were responding as the survey went on. So on the left is a kind of leaflet developed by the East Riding based on some work by Mary Dunnow and her consultants on property level protection measures that can be installed. So that went out to all the residents of East Riding through council tax leaflets. And then a key kind of issue that came through the survey was people wanting to talk to people in person, not being able to ring through switchboards or also access online. We spoke to a lot of people who didn't have good online access, including older people and people who kind of relied on pay-as-you-go phones. So in-person support was really important. And they've made a flood risk officer directly contactable in the mornings. Obviously, that's been impacted by COVID a bit. So in conclusion then, there's some serious long-term consequences from the 2007 floods which are still being felt, and from there some barriers to adopting property level protection. There's low levels of people adopting property level protection and insurance, and socioeconomic disadvantage is a barrier. But also other barriers important. People wanted in-person advice and support, and also access to trusted local companies. So a way of having a register of trusted local companies could be a really good kind of outcome at some stage from some of this work, but I know it's very difficult to achieve. And just to finish with a reminder of the low percentages of people who had adopted or implemented property level protection, and some of the measures that we asked about and people talked about. So I'm just going to finish there, and then I know we're short of time on this panel, and my email address if people have got any further questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam. I think it was a good insight for the awareness of the end customers. How do they see their roles and their demands? And yes, I saw the very nice opportunities for business because as I understood, and customers do not see that their demand just faced by the manufacturers, and they think there are gaps that could be closed by not only manufacturers but local authorities, but mainly by the product range could be widened significantly to satisfy all possible problems that arise with the flooding. And you highlighted that 47% only think that satisfied with insurance, for example, and the lack of information what people could do. And I think it's education and arise another opportunity for educating people, for providing information, for spreading information about the possible measures on the market. Thank you very much. And I think other businesses will find it very useful for them as key points for growing of their business. Thank you. And next, I would like to invite Emily and Lauren. There's another very loud voice of the people who work on property flood resilience from another side, for people who make decisions and how do they think the market should develop and how do they think the measures could be stimulating this market. Thank you.
Hello everybody. I'll just go on and I'll share my screen. Right, can everybody see that all right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's excellent, thank you. So, hello, we are Yorkshire Flood Resilience. My name's Emily House, and we've also got my colleague Lauren Davidson here with us today. We're working across Yorkshire to raise awareness of the benefits of property flood resilience and to promote positive behavioural changes that encourage its installation. Property flood resilience, or PFR, works to reduce the risk of flood damage to properties in one of two ways. Resistance approaches aim to limit or delay the amount of water entering a building, which can help to buy time to move possessions or valuable company assets to a higher level. It's also important to remember that it isn't possible to keep out water entirely. For that reason, there are also recoverability approaches. These aim to minimise the damage to the internal fabric of the property in the event that water gets in. They can help to speed up the process of flood recovery by reducing the need for costly strip out and replacement of building materials and repair and furniture. Lauren, I think you're on mute.
I apologise. There's a wide range of resistance and recoverability options available, and new PFR innovations are always being developed, from new designs of flood barriers to apps that will notify you of flood risk in your area. It's becoming much easier for people to find the PFR solutions right for their home or business. A flood resilient home doesn't have to look different. It can still be homely. An important note to remember about PFR is that there is no one-size-fits-all solution. The types of products that would be suitable depends on the building, but also its occupants, how often they're present in the building, and how physically capable of implementing the PFR measures they would be. DEFRA generally recommends a combination of resistance and resilience approaches to reduce the amount of water getting in where possible, but also to reduce the damage caused by any water that should enter the building.
With all of these exciting new developments occurring within the PFR market, why are people still holding back? We started our project with a survey of the Yorkshire public in partnership with Shelley Evans at JBA Consulting and Dr. Ben Rabb at the Integrated Catchment Solutions Programme, otherwise known as ICASP. The survey ran between March and May 2020 and aimed to find out more about the views and concerns of the Yorkshire public relating to PFR. The most common factor raised was a lack of understanding of what PFR is and the difference between the resistance and recoverability approaches and how they work. Many people said that they would need to know more if they were to consider installing PFR, and it was also noted that PFR isn't very well advertised on public platforms. Without this visibility in the market, it can be difficult to find further information about PFR unless you're already fairly well informed and you know what to look for. People were also worried about the visual impact of PFR on their homes. Would their home still feel like a home, or would it look too industrial?
There were also concerns about disruption during the installation process. After people have been affected by flooding, they would probably want to get back into their homes or workplaces as soon as possible. So many were worried that having PFR installed could delay this. However, this often isn't the case, as many measures are simple for qualified professionals to install. There needs to be more of an appreciation that PFR reduces the disruption to your property in the longer term. A few days with construction workers around now could save weeks or months out of your property in the future if you were to flood. Perceptions of the cost of PFR measures compared to their value were also a barrier to PFR uptake. Whilst many were aware of the cost of installing such measures, awareness of the benefits of PFR were much lower, leading many to believe that the investment may not be worthwhile. Several of our survey respondents stated that their property wasn't at risk or wouldn't flood again. Without an understanding of the future flood risk, the long-term benefits of PFR may not be recognised.
However, whilst many are still holding back and the PFR market's yet to become mainstream, the benefits of making homes and businesses flood resilient are clear. A review by DEFRA carried out after the Storm Desmond floods in 2015 found that for every £1 that you invest in PFR, it reduces the cost of flood damage, such as strip out of interior finishes, replacement furniture and structural and electrical repairs, by at least £5. Even if the cost of PFR may seem off-putting initially, making a property flood resilient could result in huge savings in the long term, as flooding is set to become increasingly likely due to climate change. If a property floods, furniture, appliances and valuables, or stock assets and equipment could be damaged and destroyed and contaminated by floodwater. Even plasterboard and carpets often need to be stripped out and replaced, and in extreme cases, repairs to the building's structure might even be required. Installing PFR minimises the likelihood of these costly and disruptive flood repairs. Flood repair can be a time-consuming process. Flood victims can often spend months or even years living in alternative accommodation whilst their home is stripped out, decontaminated, dried and then reinstated. Flooded businesses lose an average of 50 working days each, a huge financial challenge. Instead of having to move out whilst lengthy construction works are carried out, you might simply be able to pump out, wipe down, disinfect and maybe replace a few minor items. Major time-consuming repairs could be much less likely if a property is made flood resilient.
PFR need not be complicated or a great inconvenience. Many individual PFR products can be installed within a day. A lot of them simply require the surface to be levelled so that the product can be easily attached. The PFR market is growing, with new options always being developed. This is another major advantage for PFR. It's always getting easier for property owners to find the measures right for them, whatever their needs or the needs of their property.
The products are there and the benefits are clear, but demand remains limited. That's where we can help. We are Yorkshire Flood Resilience, one of 3 DEFRA-funded Pathfinder projects nationally who are working to raise awareness of PFR. The project is overseen by the Environment Agency, and we're working with our partners at Living with Water, with Shelley Evans at JBA Consulting, and with Dr. Ben Rabb at ICASP, based at the University of Leeds. We're led by Steve Ragg, Project Executive and Programme Lead of the Yorkshire Pathfinder at City of York Council. Our project covers 4 main stakeholder groups. Firstly, property owners and occupiers, whether that's householders or commercial or residential tenants. Then there's the property trades and building supplies sector, including developers, contractors, building suppliers and outlets. We're also targeting financial influencers, such as mortgage lenders and insurers. And finally, we're working with flood risk management authorities, including the Environment Agency, water companies and Yorkshire's 14 lead local flood authorities. Our project is divided into 4 work packages. We started the project in January 2020, and with our partners at JBA and ICASP, we conducted a survey into the perceptions and views regarding barriers to the uptake of PFR raised by our stakeholders across Yorkshire. Once we'd discovered what people would like to know about PFR, we set out to create an informative range of online resources. This makes up work package 2 of our project. Through these resources, we aim to raise awareness of PFR and its benefits, to increase demand and encourage its uptake across Yorkshire. Our range of resources will be evaluated by JBA and ICASP after the project's concluded, to inform research into the most effective ways to raise awareness of the importance of PFR and to encourage its uptake.
The third stage of our project is when we introduce you to our resources. We're developing our website, www.yorkshirefloodresilience.co.uk. This aims to combine all Yorkshire-based PFR knowledge, resources and guidance in one publicly accessible location. Our website will increase the visibility of PFR to public audiences across Yorkshire and beyond, helping to raise awareness and demand to expand the market reach. Our innovation space on the website will highlight the latest developments from across the flood sector, including exciting new PFR products and the range of new flood-related technologies. You can stay up to date with our innovations page to find out more about the newest PFR developments. PFR is an expanding market with some exciting advances in technology, and the range of measures is growing. We'll be sharing a range of videos and blog posts from across the flood sector and from affected residents and businesses. These local examples highlight real-life experiences to help normalise PFR and make it more relatable to remove the stigma around PFR installation, a factor holding people back from the PFR market.
We're sponsoring a series of YouTube episodes called Hazard and Hope, which are hosted by the Environmental Design Studio, and they include case studies and how-to examples of flood-resilient Yorkshire homes and businesses. Through our range of online resources, we aim to provide the knowledge and understanding that will help people to recognise their responsibilities when making their property flood resilient. The more people are aware of the importance of PFR, the more this will help to grow the market and increase demand. Our online awareness articles, The Real Story from Risk to Resilience, highlight the flood risk management works occurring in your area on a larger scale and help to dispel any flood-related misconceptions. We're creating online training to explain the key principles of PFR and the range of approaches available. Our animations will give clear visual depictions of what PFR would look like in position on a property. They'll also help to break down any barriers that people might have around PFR uptake. We're also looking forward to our exciting upcoming partner project with JBA and ICASP, which will evaluate the current provision and effectiveness of PFR in Yorkshire. This will inform the creation of new tools to identify the roles and benefits of PFR elsewhere in the future. Once our resources have been released, our partners at JBA and ICASP will continue on to the 4th and final work package of the project, where they'll evaluate how successful these resources have been in encouraging the uptake of PFR.
If you would like to know more about property flood resilience, our website, www.yorkshirefloodresilience.co.uk, will be launched later this year. From here, you can view our range of articles, case studies, and online resources. You can also find out more about the work we're doing within Yorkshire's communities to raise awareness of and demand for PFR. You can check out our blog with posts not only from us, but industry guests, to find out about the latest news and discussions from the PFR sector. You can follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn and Facebook to stay informed about our news and campaigns. If you have any more questions about our project, you can contact us directly by email at yorkshirepropertyfloodresilience@york.gov.uk. We'll look forward to seeing you at the Flood Resilience Innovation Centre's PFR Markets Workshop on the 24th of November.
Thank you all very much for your time this afternoon. We hope you found our presentation informative. We'll be around at the end of the session for live Q&A as well. Thank you, everyone. And now we'll be handing over to Elena.
Thank you very much, Pathfinders. So, sorry, I think it was very useful to highlight that education and spreading knowledge is a key point of developing the end customers markets, by end customers sector. So if you are a manufacturer, please take this as a starting point. Please develop your information about your products, about your possible services, the end markets, and raise the trustworthiness of your business. I think it's one of the most important problems nowadays on the PFR market. And when I know that we're aware that we're a bit late, but I would like to encourage you not to miss the opportunity to listen to Martin Dolan from Aquobex, because you have a real possible chance to have an insight from the one of the leading manufacturers on the property flood resilience market, and how they work to develop their product range, how they work to innovate to meet the demands of the property flood resilience market. Please, Martin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Martin, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen as well. We can share. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. Can I just check how long I have left? Because I can make this quite brief if we're running out of time.
We're already a little bit over time, but I mean, if
okay.
people are happy to stay. What we thought was we'd finish this off, and then I'll do a quick roundup, and then we'll go into the Q&A, so people can stay on and chat if they want to. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Martin.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, I'll try to make it pretty brief and concise. So I'm Martin Dolan. I am representing Aquobex Flood Management Solutions. I'm going to be speaking a little bit today about our journey from when we started out in the market to becoming one of the leading manufacturers and providers of solutions for flood protection in the UK. So I'll just speak a little bit about some of our goals as a company. We try to provide solutions rather than simple products. So to be able to do that, we source, develop, and supply the best and most innovative flood protection systems in the world. So we're always trying to stay ahead, look to the future, understand where the market's going, where policy's going, and try to adapt to that so that we can stay ahead of the game and offer that world-leading service. To be able to do that, we engage heavily in research, design, and we promote holistic and sustainable flood resilience approaches. By holistic, we mean, again, not simply trying to sell an individual product, but offering a holistic solution that's going to protect a homeowner or business, because we understand that every home, every business property is different and needs a unique solution. And we strive to build the Aquobex brand and value while maintaining high ethical standards. As has been already pointed out today, there has been some issues around the reputation of the industry, some cowboys who come in and are opportunistic during flood events. So we're always trying to elevate the industry by ensuring that we adopt ethical standards and set that standard. The way we do that is by focusing on our core strengths and developing partnerships. We always are trying to extend our value chain. So we work with other manufacturers of solutions, other installers, different surveying companies, and we're always trying to extend that as well. We provide solutions focus for our clients, so we're not limited to engineering or flood risk. The third point is we engage with product and material suppliers to procure and develop best-in-class solutions. We identify technology gaps and focus our R&D activities on high-value opportunities. So ensuring that we're always focused on where the market is going. And we've seen quite a lot of changes over the years, and we've managed to adapt and pivot. And we're always trying to identify and exploit innovative routes to market. So I'll speak a little bit about that as well. So as Steve pointed out earlier, there are several different markets in the flood protection industry. There's the residential, commercial. There are public bodies that are procuring large amounts of flood protection. And we focus mainly in the UK, but we're now starting to look overseas as well because of some of the barriers in the market that I'm going to talk about very shortly. Some of the products we offer: on-building resistance. So resistance products are barriers, essentially barriers and doors that keep water out. Anything that keeps water out of the building is resistance. So we have on-building resistance. We also have off-building resistance. So they are barriers and which can be manual or automatic barriers. We also offer mobile barriers, so barriers that can be deployed quickly anywhere with a plan, an emergency plan to understand how to do that. We also offer recoverability solutions, so internal products and solutions, so that if the resistance measures do get overtopped, or there's failure, or there's some entry of water, which is often quite likely, that the homes can be recovered quickly and dried out as quickly as possible. We also offer services in terms of surveying, in terms of consultation on flood risk, and design services. And more recently, we're branching out into the world of IT for flood risk management as well. At early days, we realized that the industry needed some sort of processes that would sort of unify a lot of the steps in delivering solutions that would ultimately be recognized by insurance companies. So we developed a 7-step process that starts out with the desktop study about the flood risk, a site survey, design and specification of the solutions, installation, testing and embedding. We offer guarantees, and ultimately we aim to develop solutions that would be recognizable by insurance companies, which also gives peace of mind to the homeowner. So in terms of barriers in the market, because of the nature of flooding, it's often quite cyclical. It's unpredictable. It relies on weather systems and climate. And that means that funding, particularly government funding, is reactive. And this market is driven quite heavily by government funding. So that's a barrier to the uptake, and it's a barrier to innovation within the industry, because it's hard to innovate when you're not too sure about where the funding is going to come from, or how to grow. There's also issues of liability within the value chain. So all the different steps within the delivery of a solution require different partners, and where does the liability lie? This can affect uptake by the users, because there isn't a lot of coherence and there's a lack of trust within the solutions. There's been a lot of work in developing standards and across the industry. There's been the government round table for flood protection, flood resilience. There's been a new code of practice developed by the industry. However, we've seen cases where public procurement has undermined some of those standards. All of this leads essentially to a race to the bottom in terms of providing the cheapest solution. So when the industry is driven by price alone, there's not a lot of drive for innovation. So as a ways of overcoming a lot of these barriers, what we've done is we've engaged heavily with the industry, with government bodies, in trying to elevate those standards, trying to drive up the perception amongst the public of the quality of these solutions. We've sat on government roundtables, we've engaged with Pathfinder projects, we've been heavily involved in the development of the BSI kite mark, and we've engaged heavily in research, so developing some of the research that sits behind the policy and the standards. I was involved in a research project with Oxford Brookes University School of Architecture to test and validate some of the measures that are being promoted in terms of recoverability. That research was done over 2 years. We invested heavily in that in terms of cost and time. We developed even technology based solutions to be able to model the potential damage to buildings based on the research and the data that we collected. We've also been working on the development of approved construction details that can be adopted by the industry. And we've been using this research and these outputs to engage with the insurance industry. That engagement has led to the development of some interesting partnerships, particularly with the likes of Aviva, Aquobex, and we've been speaking with Flood-Re on the principles of building back better, which has now been adopted by Flood-Re as one of their main policies, and they're now trying to promote that across the wider industry. And that entails, when you're recovering a building from flooding, drying it out, that is the most opportune time to install any recoverability measures and protection measures, because it takes down the price of installation, causes less disruption to the homeowner, and it's essentially what the industry is moving towards. We've also stayed ahead of the game. We have been involved with and are now distributing and selling information technology solutions, so that we are focusing on, in this aspect, on public bodies, emergency responders and companies, so that they can understand the risk of flooding before it happens, and then they can put in place the solutions that we offer. So we're offering this sort of end-to-end service of prediction and solution. Our vision at the moment, in terms of where we want to go, how we want to sort of capitalize on our position within the market, is we're looking to scale up to meet the changing flood risk in terms of climate change, but also in terms of where the market's going, from moving from resistance to the holistic resilience aspect of things. We're expanding our value chain, so we're always looking to engage with new installers, manufacturers of solutions and products, surveyors, product suppliers, and resellers. And we're looking to establish new locations in strategic areas of the UK. We've engaged with partners we have suppliers in Japan, Greece, and France. We did that to adapt to the fact that the UK market is quite reactive and vulnerable. Whereas if we spread across other markets, we can actually take some of the risk out. And we try to stay ahead of the market by continuing to innovate. So we're always creating new products. One new product we've developed is a zero threshold heritage door that can be supplied to and installed in listed buildings. Just one example of how we're trying to stay ahead of the game. So I'll leave it at that, and I invite anyone to engage with me directly. I'd be happy to offer any more insight and answer any more questions coming from anyone who has questions, technical or about innovation and the market. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present, and look forward to further engagement. Thanks.
Thanks, Martin. That was great. So apologies all. I know we've gone over, but we're looking at the numbers, and we've lost, I think we've lost one person when we ticked over our hour slot. So that's a great sign. Obviously, there's been a lot to cover, some really great questions coming up in the chat, and, you know, people are really engaged. And I think what for me has happened today is that we've, because we'll be inviting a lot of the speakers from today back to take part in our workshop series, as we've discussed. That'll be a much more sort of in-depth discussion that we're having. And I think today we've really sown some of the seeds of what those discussions need to be, the barriers that we see, and that, you know, and really starting to pull that knowledge about where we see those barriers and how we can work together to overcome them, and where we need to engage and what stakeholders we need to be bringing together. I think for me, the overall picture is that there just needs to be collaboration. I think there's lots of stakeholders operating, all trying to get to the same place. And we just need to, there needs to just be a general uplift. We need to kind of let people know that they need to take these measures and prevention measures for themselves. We need to let the market know that there is an opportunity, and we need to be working with those kind of key stakeholders, those government agencies, local authorities, to all work together to pull this together to happen. So as we said, I was just going to round up a little bit. I will just flash up on my screen because we've got a little bit of an overview. I think you should be able to see that there. So that's a little bit of an overview about the workshop series that we've got coming up. It starts on the 17th of November. It'll be run over 4 consecutive Tuesdays in the morning. In order to access the workshops, you just need to come and register with the project, which is, you just need to go to our website, which is www.floodinnovation.co.uk. So just register with us there. And we'd be delighted to see you on those workshops. As I say, if you know of people who might want to attend, we'd love to hear from them. After today, we'll be sending on details to you all about these workshops. We'll also be sending on a link to the recording of today's session, so you can revisit any bits that you might have missed. And we'll also be sending out an evaluation form. So we're really, really keen for you to be honest about the feedback that you provide us there. It's the only way that we can improve and kind of hone what it is that we're telling you about. We want to hear what it is you want to hear. And I think what I always say is if you've enjoyed what you've heard today, tell your friends. If you haven't, tell us, and we'd like to make it better. So as we said, we swapped this around a little bit at the end because I'm aware that people might have other engagements that they need to get off to, but we will open up the question and answers now so that people can stay on and chat if they want to, and answer any questions. But thanks for all for joining us today, and I'll just go back to the Q&A slide and hand over to Chun, who's going to take us through that. Chun.
Yes, thank you so much. I can hear myself. Yes, so thank you so much, all the panelists for presenting today, as well as the attendees for staying on. I think we've got quite a few questions which I've submitted throughout the whole webinar of today. So if I can ask all the panelists to put themselves their video on, and I'm going to try and read some of the questions, and then I'm going to pass them on to the panelists. I'll start with this first one. So this is a question by Beth. So she asks, how can my business innovate in the PFR market? And is there an opportunity to speak to an advisor about this? How do I get the support? I think Pip has answered very, very, very well. Get in touch with us at the Flood Innovation Center. If you have any kind of questions about innovation or how to enter the PFR market, we will be able to help you support by being able to work with you, or if we don't know how to do it ourselves, we will then be able to point into someone who does. So any idea, please get in touch with us. One of our team will get back to you really, really quickly, and we'll be able to get in touch very, very quickly. And then my Crozo Peter asked, does the panel feel that the flood resilience market is hampered because it appears a cottage industry unable to cope with the scale of the problem? So I think this is a really good question. I'd like to open it out to the panel. I think Pip has answered, and as well as Elena, but then I'd like to have the panel answer that as well. Is there anyone on the panel wanting to take this question? Or Sam, might be up your street.
I think, from the survey work, it was clear that people didn't know how to get access to products, what products there were, what the costs were, how to get good quality builders, as I said. So I feel that was a huge barrier. It felt like we were asking a question and people didn't really know how to answer it. And we were struggling to get all the different options ourselves when we were putting together the kind of multiple choice question. And people didn't want to say what they'd done really, because they felt that it was very small and ineffective. So I felt that was it, that there was a big disconnect between the need and the services that people could access and product.
Okay.
And particularly in the local area, because it felt like a lot of people were looking for local businesses.
Okay. What about from your experience, Emily and Lauren? Do you echo what Sam is saying from your conversations with local communities?
I think there is a demand for people to sort of have local suppliers around. So we're raising awareness of the options available essentially, and we're raising awareness of the variety of options available and what to look for, so that people can find a solution that works for them essentially.
Absolutely. And then so following on from that question, we've got another question from Peter as well. Isn't a barrier to innovation local councils with a jobs worth approach, in that they find it easier to say no to fresh innovation than to take time and care to consider? Apparently this has been his own personal experience. You know, how can we overcome this barrier? I think I'm going to open this out to Steve and Martin. Steve, would you be happy to comment on that?
Yeah. So the question's about sort of looking for innovation opportunities, is it?
Yeah. So I think he's saying councils or local authorities previously were, you know, staying off novel and innovative ideas, whereas how can we overcome this?
Yeah, and it is a challenge. I mean, trying to sort of break into markets with a new innovation, you know, as Martin has alluded to, is really quite a difficult thing to do. There are, and the workshops that Pip has mentioned, I think have been geared up to really help organisations that are wanting to sort of do some innovation to come along to those. And we'll take you through that sort of innovation process, which enables you to step back, fundamentally have a little look at what the nature of the problems are, and see what solutions are currently available to deal with them, and then start to think creatively about alternative ways that might be able to come up with a superior solution to the ones that are currently around. And there's some processes and techniques which are quite well developed that can help organisations and individuals go through a staged process that will help them to come up with a range of different ideas that may very well then you know, get some traction with potential customers. I know the councils do tend to be risk averse. It's not their money they're spending. They have protocols and procedures and a whole load of other things to make sure that that money is being very well spent. And anything which is sort of cutting new ground tends to sort of evoke some risk with it. So there's often some credibility issues that you have to go through above and beyond when dealing with the public sector organisations. But again, I'm sure Martin will be able to, from his own personal experience, sort of add to that.
Yeah, exactly. I think those procedures that the councils are tied with, they have to show the cost benefit of all of these measures. They have to be able to demonstrate that what they're spending is actually returning a benefit to the public. And until the evidence is there to show that innovative measures actually provide a benefit, their hands are tied really in what they can actually procure and what they can fund, which is a bottleneck for the industry, because as long as those things are not being procured, there's not a drive for much innovation. It's an industry that is driven mostly by public procurement, which is a problem for innovation. And because of the cyclical nature of all of that funding as well, it's very reactive. There's also a huge educational piece that needs to be done. Policy is moving further than quicker than the technical understanding of a lot of people in the councils. So while we're moving from over the last 30 years, we've moved from large infrastructure projects, walls and dams, to property level resistance, and now the integration of recoverability into the picture. It's complicated. It's really complicating the picture. Even within the industry, there's still a lot of uncertainty around recoverability. What are the best measures? What are the best approaches? What are the costs and the benefits? Best processes, when to install these measures, and how to validate them, how to monitor them, maintain them. And as long as all of that exists, there's going to be resistance within public bodies to procure them. So yes, the answer is yes, it is a barrier.
Yeah. I mean, there's no one size fits all, isn't it? It's a collaborative effort from both sides, from the consumer as well as from the policyholders. And I think you touched upon it with Ray's question. So Ray's question was, isn't there a low risk, low cost, low quality products which are currently flooding the market, making it an issue for the future? You know, he's asking who's going to educate the public and who tends to purchase on a lower price policy basis. And I think, Martin, you just literally knocked the head on that, saying, you know, it needs to come from both ends, and then education also needs to come from the consumers themselves, because if you're buying low quality products, it's not going to protect you somewhere down the line. You need to sometimes be experimental in certain ways and try out new and innovative products. I think also the work that DEFRA Pathfinder, so Emily and Lauren, the work that you're doing is also quite crucial in trying to educate people and communities down the line where, you know, we need to take care of ourselves, because who else is going to take care of us if we don't look at ourselves? We have one more question. I'm going to try and finish them before we cut off. So this is a question from Chris Fry. So PFR surveyors have a critical role to play in the emerging market as set out in the Code of Practice. How does the panel see this current status and outlook over the next 3 years for PFR surveyors in terms of demand, willingness for customers to pay, and also the supply of appropriately specialist surveyors? I'd like to open this up to the floor. Who is best suited to answer this?
I'll take a pop at that one. The BRE a few years ago developed a training course for PFR surveyors. I know a lot of people within the industry did the course. However, I don't think there was a lot of uptake in terms of actually getting certified, which was the sort of the driving force behind that course, was to get people trained up and then also sort of create a certification scheme for surveyors. The problem with that was surveyors had to be independent from installation and manufacturing companies. So there wasn't a lot of demand out there for the certification scheme in itself, which, you know, there aren't a lot of appropriately skilled surveyors. There are a lot of surveyors out there without the understanding of flood risk, and then there's a lot of flood risk experts without the surveying specialties. So the demand for that, I mean, the Code of Practice has come out this year, the Industry Code of Practice, which has taken several years to develop, and it's pretty concise is not the word, it's comprehensive, and surveying is a major part of that. Hopefully with the adoption of that Code of Practice into the industry, we'll see a higher demand for surveyors. Willingness for customers to pay is another issue, because they want that included in the cost of the installation, and they see a survey as a sort of a free service that they want up front. But again, it's because of this cottage industry reputation or image.
Yeah. So I think everyone needs to do their bit and try and change our mindsets whilst educating ourselves, along with working with the policyholders and stakeholders, and also working with us. You know, we like to work with companies and SMEs who are able to innovate and want to innovate within this flood resilience sector. I think that is it for now for Q&A. If there's any other attendees who wants to ask the questions live, you know, put your hands up right now. I'm happy to let you to get in touch with the panelists straight away. Do I see any hands? Or any panelists, if you have any questions to ask each other, otherwise I'm going to send it back to Pip or Elena to close out. Okay, Pip, yours.
Okay, so yeah, I think we know what we need to do. Easy. So, but I mean, the only thing we can do is keep putting one foot in front of another and coming together as a community and sharing what we know the issues to be and doing what we can to kind of work through those barriers. So I know that a couple of our panelists have got to jump off shortly, so I'm going to wrap up. But just to say a huge thanks to all of the panelists who've joined us today for what I think has been a really informative and a great start to the discussions that we need to have around PFR in the market for that. And again, a massive thanks to the team and to Elena for pulling this together. And finally, thanks to all of, mostly to all of our attendees, to all of those who've tuned in today and listened, stayed with us half an hour beyond what we envisaged. I think we'll just run 90-minute webinars in future. Too much to squeeze into an hour. So many issues to tackle. So, but thanks to everyone, and have a great rest of the day. Speak to you soon.